I really want to tell you about what's happening in Afghanistan and how the people in power play the media. This is a great case of it. So there's a new offensive, of course, that we are doing in Afghanistan in the Marja area, and it's getting a lot of press. And I found something surprising about it, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what was different about this, right? Because I read this amazing story in the New York Times about how reporters embedded in this group of American soldiers and Afghan soldiers fighting in the area, and they're taking heavy fire, and there's snipers in the area, and then you're reading stories about how the Taliban fighters are more nuanced now, and they're better trained, and we're taking some casualties. And so I'm surprised by this because, one, we haven't seen this level of detailed reporting necessarily all the time, but also it's on the front page. Sometimes you get really great reports about Afghanistan and Iraq, but they're buried in the paper. But now it's front page. And then all of a sudden it's being trumpeted how well the Taliban fighters are fighting and how much trouble we're in that particular area as we're doing this offensive. That seems strange to me because usually the media goes with whatever the military leaders give them, right? They give them certain information and then the media reports it. Well, the Washington Post had a terrific story about this, which of course was buried in the middle of the paper. It was not on the front page, even though you would think that this would be massively relevant. The story was about how the U.S. commanders are using this battle in Marja to sell the war to us, to the U.S. public. And that and so then everything began to fall into place. Oh, I see. And then IPS, Interpress Service News Agency, did a great follow-up story on that, where they explained that McChrystal and Petraeus have been pushing to use Marja as an example of what we can accomplish. Petraeus had a speech in Istanbul where he talked about this, where we're going to, hey, this battle is now fought as a battle of ideas and winning over the people of Afghanistan, but also winning over the people of the United States. And then the idea is that if they win in Marja, that they then will be able to buy more time so that they will not withdraw in 2011 as Obama stated. That if they can show that they're having some success and some victory, well, then the American people will have more patience in allowing that to develop and for us to stay longer in Afghanistan. So we're getting played here. So now when you go back to the original stories about how tough it is in Marja and how they're taking so much heat and fire and snipers and this and that, it all makes sense. Why? That's the commanders feeding to the media. Oh, this is a tough battle. I'll tell you what, we got our work cut out for us here. But heroically, a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later, it's going to turn out that we win in Marja. And God, that's a great victory despite all that adversity, right? Now, why do I say that if I don't, maybe Marja is a great victory. Maybe it is really hard. Well, here come the other facts involved here. Marja is a town of about 50,000 people. And what a lot of the policy experts have been saying is they don't get it. Why are they going to Marja? First, there isn't much of a battle there. The real battle is in Kandahar. That city is 10 times larger and really where the trouble is and where the Taliban is centered, right? And in fact, we now find out that as we got into Marja, most of the Taliban that were in that area had already retreated. So these ideas of this great Taliban force putting us to the test in Marja is largely, not entirely, there really was gunfire, there were, snipers there, and there really was battles there, et cetera, but largely a fiction. Now, how do they create that fiction? This is amazing stuff. See, if they don't want the reporter there, they don't have him there, and all of a sudden there's no battle, there's no snipers, because the reporter wasn't there to see it, and that doesn't make it into the paper, right? If they want it to seem like, oh, we're in the middle of a fight, they take a reporter and they embed him into the front lines. And all of a sudden he sees bullets whizzing by. He's like, oh my God, there's a war here. Well, of course there's a war there. What do you think we've been doing there? Okay? And they create this idea, and then they say to the New York Times, this is an important story. We gave you we let your reporter be the one that's in the front line. You better run in the front. And the New York Times gets excited, and they run it on the front page. Oh God, it's brilliant. It really is. So then you will see the end of this story, okay, because it hasn't fully ended yet. You will see in a couple of days or a couple of weeks that we have heroically won in Marja, even though it was an enormous battle. And then slowly you will see over time the commanders making the case, oh, I'll tell you what, if you want more success like we had in Marja, we're going to need more time and, more resources, etc., and we're going to have to stay in Afghanistan a little longer. And that's how you get played. Credit to the Washington Post for running that story. Credit to the Inter-Press Service News Agency for giving it more background. But of course, the Washington Post, in its editorial wisdom, did not put that on the front page. A story that is very important, very interesting, and really gives you the true perspective runs in the middle of the newspaper where they hope no one will read it.
Watch more clips at theyoungturks.com.